Greetings from Pittsburgh. I am Tim O'Malley with Drew Mentock. This is Irish Illustrated pregame instant analysis brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. Drew, quick pivot to a hotel Zoom here. But Tim Priester and I will be on site for the game. Drew Mentock and John Bryce will be handling immediate Irish Illustrated overtime postgame. Until then, a lot of ground to cover, Drew. And a couple of thoughts I wanted to throw to you quickly was, Pittsburgh number one against the run that rush defense, rushing yards allowed per game and per carry. Notre Dame was right there until the Navy game. If Pitt had played Navy, they would be switching sides right now.
Yes.
My point is, it's two really stingy rush defenses. They don't give up a lot of big runs either. Both of them are adept at closing off those holes, but if someone gets to the second level, making the tackle.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's really noteworthy. And Pitt's had some really good games against some good rush offenses. Like Louisville is top 25 rush offense. They held them to 1.5 yards per carry. I don't think Louisville has anyone on Jeremiyah Love or Jadarian Price's level. And I think it's worth noting, John Bryce did point out that NC State, pointed out on Irish Illustrated Insider that NC State had a good game against them. And a lot of that happened because Hollywood Smothers, who's one of the best backs that in the country, had a 65-yard run and 86 yards total. So that seems like a reasonable option for today, where Notre Dame's probably going to stick with the run, even if it's not always working. But with those two backs in particular, you can break off a big run for a 65 plus yard score, no problem too.
And I think Mike Denbrock will be patient with the run today, and Irish fans are going to have to be because there's going to be plenty of run stuffs no matter what. Pittsburgh does not give up 20 or 30-yard runs, just like Notre Dame doesn't. They've given up both teams have given up five apiece, and I think that's kind of the hallmark of good rush defenses. Obviously, Love and Price, once you hit that second level, is a different animal, as you pointed out for Pittsburgh. But it could be a little bit for the Panthers today with the Irish defense because Desmond Reed is supposed to be back and as healthy as he has been since early October. That was preseason All-American running back. And even if Notre Dame can kind of corral him, I think the passing game with Pitt's total reliance on the passing game, Desmond Reed can be a weapon in the passing game against the Irish. They'll look to get him against the linebackers, so have to be a big day for that. I would say that quartet, but probably that trio. As we know, Jalen Steen will be attacking scrimmage, not covering it.
Yes, it's really going to test how good Drake Bowen really has gotten in pass coverage. We've seen a lot of improvement. He's covered even Hollywood Smothers well in some contests earlier this year, but that they're really going to try and go at him, I think, and it's something that they can look at. Last year film, he was as you know, a preseason All-American, so it's not like he's a secret even if he's been hurt, but that's definitely something they're going to need to be ready for. And even on the other side of the ball, Pitt's got really good linebackers too.
Yeah.
That can cover. Pat Narduzzi mentioned that he almost had to tell Kyle Lewis, who's also a preseason unanimous All-American, he needed to calm down because he was just so amped and animated and practicing so well on Tuesday. So it'll be really interesting to watch both linebackers. You could argue this is some of the best linebacker cores in the country.
And he's back healthy now after it's not quite as bad of a situation as Reed, but we did get a quick note that something to watch at the beginning of the game is they could be a little bit compromised Pitt at both defensive line and on the back end at safety. And if that happens at safety, it could be a true freshman playing against CJ Carr, which brings us to the other important point where if you can't run the ball well, you got to protect your passer. There's got to be a lot of pass protection this one. Notre Dame has been fantastic protecting CJ Carr since Miami. They've given up 9 sacks on the season. 3 were against Miami. 2, of course, were on that last drive. This is a little bit different animal, not different than Miami and Texas A&M, but different than Notre Dame has faced since then, protecting Carr against the Panthers, who really, although they're not a high sack rate team, they do like to attack line of scrimmage, and they're doing anything for 2nd and 12 rather than 2nd and 7.
Yes, yeah, and they're definitely going to throw some unique things at them to try and confuse them. And you do have two relatively new starting offensive linemen there, and I think they're still top 25 in sacks on the season, so they're certainly not bad. And I think that's going to be key because their pass defense hasn't been great. That is definitely the one weakness of this team, and should be able to throw it over the top. So if they can get CJ Carr enough time, this could be a day where he throws for over 300 yards. Miller Moss did for Louisville, and I think CJ Carr is a much better, more accurate passer than he is. So that's certainly a way you can beat this defense, but they got to keep him clean enough to give him the time to do so.
To kind of put it in perspective, I took a quick look, and nearly 74% of Pitt's yardage comes from passing the ball. Nearly 70% of Notre Dame's comes from passing the ball. So it is obviously a key point you don't think of when you have Jeremiyah Love, Desmond Reed, Jadarian Price in a football game, but I think it's there today. That brings me to The one concern I had all week, because I liken Pittsburgh's trio of receivers. A&M had three receivers that bothered Notre Dame. Miami had three receivers. They didn't all bother Notre Dame, but Notre Dame had to account for three receivers, especially Malachi Tony in the slot. Notre Dame changed its defense for USC's three receivers. Well, Pitt has that as well. How Notre Dame plays them one-on-one early, how much they mix in zone throughout the game, I think is going to determine a lot in the second half, because when Notre Dame starts getting its interceptions on the back end, it's usually because they've taken a lead and they make the opposing quarterback one-dimensional having to throw.
Yeah, so it will be interesting because sometimes I feel like they start mixing in zone early and they kind of, even against USC, they overcomplicated things. And Dallas Golden, if he's out there, looked lost a lot early in USC, and then they
Blows
kind of
up.
seemed to, yeah, did and at certain times didn't even get all the way. Like his guy went in motion to the far side of the field, and he didn't even get there in time. He was so out of position. Um, so it'll be kind of curious if Notre Dame kind of keeps it simpler and just tries to really play, man defense and not do anything too confusing
Yeah.
pre-snap. But I get the temptation because you do have a true freshman quarterback who hasn't seen anywhere near close to this level of defense. I know he's 5-0, but the best team he's faced is NC State, who's 5-4, and isn't great defensively either.
For Irish fans watching at home, it's Kenny Johnson. Number two is their leading wide receiver. Raphael Williams plays almost exclusively out of the slot, and I bring him up number five because the slot has what I believe has troubled Notre Dame most of the year, which caused the Leonard Morris switch. I don't think this is a Leonard Morris switch to the slot position full time, because Johnson can beat you as well, and then Kataris Hicks is their downfield threat. It's like an accomplished KK Smith. No, it's a guy that Hicks is almost 19 yards per catch, so I think that's something to watch early on, because as you know, Notre Dame very good in the red zone. Shots over the top, it hasn't happened in a long time against the Irish. I think that's something that could really help Pitt today. If they can get one over the top, that would hurt Notre Dame a little bit. In the red zone, Pittsburgh gets there, Drew, as much as anyone. I think it's their third in the country in red zone visits, but they've also played two fewer games than those other teams, which means they are really first in the country in red zone rate. Somehow on 53 red zone trips, they only have 30 touchdowns. If they're going to get in the red zone five times against Notre Dame today, five or six times, well, six would be a lot, but if they get the red zone five times and they come away with two touchdowns, Notre Dame is going to win this game.
Well, it'll be interesting too because they had a pretty good kicker in Trey
Yeah.
Bukowski, who's maybe that's a little bit. Well, he was 19 for 21, as you mentioned off air. So maybe that was a little bit. Well, we can be a little bit more conservative and relying on that. So I am curious a little bit too if Pitt changes its game plan a little bit in the red zone. I don't know who their backup kicker is, what they're going with specifically, but
All I saw was Twitter was exploding. Pitt Twitter was exploding and thinking that no matter what, this was the end of the game because they didn't have their kicker. But they had a massive kicking advantage, Drew. To your point, they had a
yes.
massive kicking advantage coming to this game that is now gone.
Yeah, so maybe that changes things and they're a little more aggressive in the red zone. Maybe that's to Notre Dame's advantage too, if Pitt's doing something they're not used to trying to do because they have a kicker out kind of, late in the week.
I read a goal to go story this week for research every snap in goal to go situations, and there was actually a little better than I thought. But I think just saying it this way, 7 of 31 trips they got nothing, not in the red zone, but in goal to go.
Oh, wow.
7 of 31 trips you get nothing. You can't have a nothing, I say, against Pittsburgh. I don't think nothing works against Pittsburgh down there. But do you kick a field goal? Marcus Freeman does not like kicking field goals with a good kicker. Do you kick a field goal if it's fourth and goal from the four? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's hard to see it doing, although that's the maybe within the range at this point I'd feel comfortable with Eric Schmidt kicking from.
And fourth and
So
goal
maybe
from the
they will.
nine, you kick a field goal, right, Drew? I
Yes.
mean, that seems.
I
But
think
yeah,
yeah, it's probably situation dependent to a degree, but with Notre Dame's running backs, with how accurate CJ Carr is in short yardage situations too, like it's hard to see them not wanting to go that given Marcus Freeman's aggressive mindset, as you just mentioned. Like that is like I like even if they're crowding the box, like get CJ Carr rolling out a little bit as long as he doesn't try and do too much. Like he's so good and accurate on getting those quick throws out, which I think is can be just as effective, if not more effective, in short yardage situations.
you mentioned Freeman's aggressive nature. I took a look at this because I keep harping on you can't come up empty because you only get so many possessions. Northern gets plenty of possessions because they've only punted 19 times on the season through nine. That's a remarkable stat, really. I know Navy does contribute to that because you don't punt as much against Navy. They only punt once annually, basically, against Navy. But 19 punts, basically, if you're getting to Well, if you're past midfield, Notre Dame's going for it, unless it's a really rough 4th and 13 situation. But I think that could come into play as well today. And I'd like to see Notre Dame again maybe take a shot, Drew, like they did against Boston College when you have that 4th and 2 from the 40-yard line.
Yes, I think that's a good point. Yeah, you've in Ray Guy semifinalist punter is only punting 19 times as
Yeah.
well. So kind of interesting note there. But yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that shot play worked really well. I think that was right at the start of the coming out of the quarter too. CJ Carr threw downfield. I agree that that's the type of play, especially with how aggressive Pitt is going to be against the run. And we do usually see Notre Dame with those running backs try to run it in short yardage first too. So that's definitely a play that could be there. And I think that's a good call by you.
Final point for me, Drew. And I bring it up not because Notre Dame has been heavily penalized in its ACC officiated games, but ACC officials, same as the NC State game, I'm told, the way Pitt and Notre Dame play defense, especially Notre Dame, you would assume if there's 42 passes going in the air today, that Notre Dame is going to be clutching and grabbing on a dozen of them. How many of those are called? How many of those are called that matter, of course, downfield? And on the flip side of this, I am shocked by this. I didn't even notice this watching 3 Pitt games back for film review. I got this from Pete Sampson after the podcast. We were trying to get it for our Irish Illustrated Insider podcast on Thursday. According to Pro Football Focus, Pitt runs man coverage at a lower rate than any team in the FBS. That is not something you're used to with Pat Narduzzi.
Wow.
Notre Dame does not, but I think with the balls in the air, how it's being called is going to be interesting today.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting. And I think CJ Carr is somebody who does very well against zone too. So that'll be kind of interesting if they do change that up a little bit today.
Drew, 89.7% of Pitt's zone is zone coverage
Wow.
in passing situations. Obviously, that doesn't include everything else, but that was a shocking stat to me. I didn't think that showed up as easily. Obviously, Notre Dame's coaches do, as it's their job to figure these things out. But that's important, Irish fans looking downfield, because as you know, Pat Narduzzi's defense has Notre Dame probably beat Pat Narduzzi's best defense when he was the defensive coordinator at Michigan State because they were getting the clutching and grabbing calls. Well, Notre Dame clutches and grabs a little bit more, especially Christian Gray and also Devonta Smith. So I think looking for them on downfield, how this game is officiated early could be important to the proceedings. Anything else, Drew? You'll be back
Uh,
with John Bryce for an overtime post game.
yes, yeah. I think the thing I want to know is I'm kind of curious what you're there, what the environment is. This is the first time in 20 years Pitt has hosted a game day on a Saturday. It's a morning game. I'm kind of curious what the environment's like. I know that's not always a place where the fans are as engaged. So I'm kind of curious with game day being there, what that environment's like, and if that contributes to the game and has any impact today.
That's it for Drew Mentock and I from our hotels and home bases. If you're an ABC 57 fan, Pete Sampson and I will be on pregame live from Acrisure Stadium. It's going to be hard for me to say that again, but I got it out one time. Formerly Heinz Field. For Drew Mentock, I am Tim O'Malley, and Irish Illustrated pregame instant analysis was brought to you by, as always, the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana.